This episode is for Friday, May 6th, 2016. Welcome, Crater fans. I'm your host, Joshua, along with my co-host.
Bobby Iyer. It's funny, I'm a co-host now.
Yeah,
First
definitely.
episode is the co-host, not guest co-host, but actual co-host.
Looks like you got a haircut too, man.
Yeah, I'm looking fresh, man.
Yeah, it looks
I, I had to get a cut for this momentous day in my life. Just kidding.
nice. Oh, goodness. Yeah, so, gosh, it was weird because, we didn't do an episode last week, really. Like, we did it on
Yeah,
Tuesday, which was really the week before. So it's been like we did one episode over 2 weeks, really.
yeah.
Kind of threw me off my game.
That was a good episode, though.
It
How was
was.
how was the community feedback? Any
Uh,
feedback for you?
yeah, good. I think a lot of people copied you on it too on Twitter. So as far as what I've seen,
Okay.
people seem to have enjoyed it. Definitely. I think there's some people that are maybe frustrated with choices Meteor's made. Like today, there was a lot of tweeting about all the demo sites being gone, document
Yeah,
sites being gone. So it happened,
it happens.
definitely. And we had a blast earlier this week too, man. I really loved you and Ramsey got to talk to Dan Abramoff, which was pretty awesome,
Yeah, man, this has been a long week because that feels like forever ago.
right?
Yeah, and I had to wake up at 6 in the morning for that thing. Oh, it was terrible.
Yeah, so I always let the guest choose the time, and Dan's over in like Paris or London or somewhere, and like he chose 2 p.m. his time, which was 9 a.m. my time, which was fine, but then it was like 6 a.m. for you. So
Yeah. Oh well, anything for the guests, you know.
yes,
Um,
yes,
but it was a great show. That one's going to be super fun for people to listen to.
yeah, I'm
We
excited.
got deep into it.
Yeah, we did not just Redux, but React too. Like talking
Yeah.
a lot of great
So
stuff.
if you're interested in that, then you got to tune into that show for sure.
Yes, definitely. So we just put one out this week. I hold on to them I do them every 2 weeks if I can. So one will be out, I guess, in 2 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. What are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to talk about Meteor. It's all Meteor today. Like crazy.
Oh man.
No, not a ton of React stuff, except for this one. Meteor is the perfect backend for React Native. Astronomy 2.0.
Cool.
Tuning Mongo for scalability with Meteor. We got a MDG post.
Nice.
Yeah, I was excited to see that one turn up.
That was a good one.
And a bridge for Meteor and Redux. I guess that's kind of. And I thought, yeah, maybe we could sneak in some stuff. I know a guy has been making all these Apollo examples in his spare time, so I thought maybe we'd talk about that too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should totally talk about all that.
Yes, definitely. Because we had some interesting conversations behind the scenes about all that. So.
Yeah.
All right. So the first one is from Spencer. I love Spencer. And we'll do a shameless plug. It looks like he's going to be speaking at the next Crater Remote Conf.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's going to be talking about React Native and Meteor. Shocking, right?
Yeah.
That's mostly what we hear out of him.
Yeah.
He's working on a book. Seems like a good fit to me. And then the next conf is all about mobile.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've got some exciting talks lined up for that. But this is a good one. So it makes a strong case for why you should use Meteor as your backend for React Native. And I don't know. I like the article. Some of it's just, kind of a paragraph summary, and it's got a link to some of his other articles.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like he's been building towards this post, and you can go read some of his other stuff. But for instance, like he talks about React Native is fast to get started with, and so is Meteor.
Yeah.
And so they seem like a smart fit in that regard. In particular, like the real-time piece of it, the pub sub, like I know you mentioned something about one of his articles, and he's, you were talking about methods, and then like he responded with an article on Medium saying like I advocate for using methods. But then he said, when you do need something or like a reactive feature, which I think some apps don't need fully reactive features, right? Then just make that feature built on PubSub and then use methods for the rest. So
Yeah, those are good, but Spencer, I'm gonna have to. I might have to like give you a counter argument, because one thing that we didn't talk about here with React Native and Meteor is the tooling. And if you're going to use Meteor as your backend, you're buying into a lot more than just a server. You're buying into the build tool. You're buying into all the little quirks that any Meteor developer has to like deal with.
is that true though? I mean, you could just
Well,
use a DDP library and kind of punt on some of that, right?
you could,
And just use the React Native tooling.
you could do that. You could do that, and that's something that we need to educate people on doing, because right now there is no best practice on what to do here.
Right.
Right? I personally I would not know that I could rely on something like some DDP library effectively. Right? There's
Mm-hmm.
also there's also a problem with these DDP libraries, right? Like the best one for native I felt was Meteor iOS from Martin's library. That's because he built the abstractions similar to Mini Mongo and the whole Meteor data interactions a client developer would usually have. But for example, like like Android DDP, for example, does not have those types of goodies. So you end up writing more code to kind of invent the wheel yourself.
This is interesting because in reality, we're theoretically with 1.4, we're going to get DDP and tracker and all that kind of stuff, Mini Mongo, like all shipped into NPM, right? And then you could really just pull that stuff in.
Yeah. I think with 1.4 and the whole move, the Meteor core moving into NPM is going to make this case a lot more convincing. React and Meteor combo probably is more strong when you get to pick and choose what tools you want. You want the best tools from this part of Meteor, and you want the best tools from the React Native part. But right now, I feel like you don't get just the banana, you get the gorilla too. And yeah. I don't think that's how you say that phrase, but I just said it that way. That's my thoughts.
Hey, I like it. I like it. Definitely.
But all of his points, they're all like positive points. I just wanted to question, and maybe he'll tweet me and write another blog post, and I encourage him to do so.
Well, what's getting interesting here is at this point, I said we'd talk a little bit about Apollo, but I think it makes sense to bring it up here too, because the Ben's last transmission episode, which I'll ding them a little bit. They should have said it was Ben's last show on that show, but that was a bummer. But we love Ben, so you guys should know. Paul, I think Paul's taken over, so it's not going to go away, but it won't be Ben anymore. But they talked a lot about React Native and Apollo, which is interesting. And James Baxley and the New Spring guys are working a lot on that. And again, a shout out for them. They're going to talk about going from Cordova to React Native at the Creator Mobile Conf. So that'll be exciting.
That team is cool. That team is good.
They're doing a lot of awesome work. But my question becomes like, what's going to be faster? Do you think waiting on 1.4 and all those libraries to get an NPM, or just get started with Apollo now and build your React Native app that way with the Redux integration? I think the thing you're missing now would be real time and maybe slightly better user accounts integration, but I think you can limp by with the user account stuff they have now. What do you think?
Well, it depends on what kind of risk you want to take. Because the project right now is like pre 1.0, and we're bumping versions every day. I just made breaking changes like last week. which we had to go update a lot of people had to update their code because we've made a huge breaking change.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sashko made a breaking change on Tuesday on how like queries get parsed. Like, so all this stuff is happening really rapidly. And if you're feeling comfortable with that and want to get your app going, I will say Apollo is super nice for the toy app right now. If you're making a toy, something you want to play with on the weekend and have fun, it's that kind of project to try out these concepts of maybe a better client experience for your React Native app. But if you're trying to go to production with this thing right now, I don't know. The New Spring guys are like testing it out in the waters, and like they're like pretty much the huge production candidate right now that's running into the use cases they need. And granted, they're contributing all that stuff back, and it's over time it's going to get a lot better.
Yeah.
But I would not invest the time in a production application right now, like today. But that might change next month or 2 months from now. You know,
you got to think, yeah, like development time, even part-time on the side, at best it's gonna take you 2 months to really get something decent together.
Yeah.
So like do you think Apollo's there in 2 months, or do you like? So my gut says we'll probably see 1.4 by July, maybe mid.
I think Apollo will hit maturity in like 6 more months. Yeah, and especially like WorkPop's not using it yet, but once it gets a little bit more mature, then I'm gonna put it to the test, and then I would totally feel more comfortable like promoting it to people.
Yeah.
But right now, like I've only used it to build really, really trivial example apps. And
yes.
now I need to go and build even more complex examples.
Yes.
And once I get deeper into that and I have more complex examples for the community, hell yeah, use it.
Yeah, cool. That's what prompted our conversation. As I was looking at the work you did over the weekend, and I'm like looking at the shopping cart example, and like you're wiping out the shopping cart and making a fake one, and I'm like, where's the security here? And you're like, well, I didn't do any. And so then I'm like, well, where's the docs on this? And Sashko pointed us in the right place, and I was like, oh yeah, this actually, like, this is further along than I thought it was, to be honest.
Yeah. I think since we're in active development in Apollo right now. I think these trivial examples were good in the beginning because I just wanted people to get comfortable with doing the motions, and that's good. I think I've accomplished that. People know the motions of like what the different pieces are, maybe, and how they relate to the docs as they are today. But exactly. There's security to figure out. Authentication is big. Like, also there's ACL to worry about. How are we going to do access control on these queries?
Right.
How are we going to have efficient queries? How are we going to have tooling and monitoring on all these things that are now a proxy of your Meteor application or any application?
Yeah.
So there's a lot to think about. So like it is a shiny new toy, and I encourage people to use it. But like for Spencer, who's building production level stuff, maybe I wouldn't tell him to do it. Not yet.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was ultimately driving at. Like, where's it at? And I think you're right. Like, to me, I don't feel it's like I haven't written any GraphQL code yet, but it feels like it's not quite there yet. I want to see a better like user accounts story for Apollo before I would probably jump in with a production level kind of application that I care about. But it is, it's super interesting to think about. Like, people are now querying, like the one I was referencing, you use Postgres for it, and SQLize. Is that? I think
using ORMs they're great even with any database. So it's almost like Mongo syntax. You're not really losing out on much.
Yeah, which is nice. I think that's the strength here. And James gave a great talk at Meteor Night, or Dev Night, or whatever it's called now. He gave a great talk there that showed off the fact that they were like pulling data in from 3 different databases, like SQL Server, I think he said, and MySQL and Mongo, and kind of like joining it all together using Apollo and GraphQL.
Yeah,
it was just seamless to the client. They just said, I need some data, and they got it.
Yeah, so I got really nerdy and I read the whole GraphQL spec, and like because it's easier to work in Apollo if you know GraphQL, right? But it's if you're a mobile developer out there or even a front end developer, your life gets a lot easier with GraphQL.
Mm-hmm.
because you dictate the terms essentially with the server. You want certain fields to look a certain way. You don't need to have a meeting about it. You know, you don't have
Yes.
to waste some time about it. Just do it. And as as long as if you have confidence in that your GraphQL server does exactly what you tell it to do, then that's all you need to worry about as a client developer. You know,
Yeah,
like
I would say that that's actually a really great point because I remember one of the more painful projects I did in my development career was when I was at GoDaddy working on the Outright project, now is called GoDaddy Bookkeeping. But they had Backbone, which was making JSON kind of queries against the backend Ruby
Mhm.
server. But then they had like a Titanium app, which Titanium was terrible. And we were switching to just be straight up iOS native app. And I was kind of running the team. I was in charge of the mobile team, but we did a project where we were trying to like consolidate all the different methods that they had for querying this data,
Yeah.
like an actual API people could work with. And like it was really terrible because we had to work really closely with the front end team and with the mobile team to make sure that we were building the API in a way that they needed.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. Like GraphQL just says like we'll just put some data out and you tell us how you want it.
Yeah, it reduces friction.
Yeah.
And I think more people who adopt GraphQL on mobile devices are going to have way better user experiences. Because right now, what frustrates my mobile developers here are the lack of one Meteor's data system, and we don't really need reactivity as much. So
Hmm.
they struggle with like, why do I need to use DDP? I've been so more efficient, doing REST or whatever.
Yes.
But even here, like with GraphQL, it's like, who cares if I gave you REST, if I gave you a Meteor method, I give you whatever, like, who cares? You personally don't care,
Yeah.
right? You're making the coolest app ever. You're making Tinder and you want to swipe left and right. Like, who cares, like, what happens, you know? So I think that enables people to think like that. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
I agree. I agree. All right. Totally hijacked Spencer's thread here, but it was definitely like it's been on my mind. I've been thinking a lot about GraphQL. Had a lot of conversations about it this week.
Yeah. I mean, Spencer did his job. He made us think.
Yeah,
And that's good. I like this article a lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Good article, and I still think you're right. Like there's valid room here to be able to build a Meteor backend that React Native's tapping into.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So on to the next thing. We're going to talk about Astronomy 2.0. Now, if anyone doesn't know what astronomy is you would like if anyone knows what object relational mapping is, ORM. It's pretty much like a way to kind of introduce this like I don't know in functional programming you make like utility methods, right? Essentially, you're actually putting like a schema on your data, right? Your
Mhm.
collections, and you're also putting like different utilities on how to enforce the schema and get values and save values. Like um, Sequelize is an npm module that wraps SQL, MySQL, and stuff. Is an
Mhm.
ORM. What it allows you to do is define models and create methods and find, and that's how you can take an ugly SQL syntax and turn it into something like a mongo.find. It's mapping certain functions to certain properties. So astronomy, sorry, that's a long-winded response, but if anyone didn't know, that's what it is.
Mhm.
Astronomy is the same thing, but for meteor applications. And I'm actually, it's funny. I really wanted to use astronomy, but like, it really sucks that the simple schema Eric came out with this, or it sucks for what's his name, Yagi, that simple schemas Eric came out with simple schema first. You know, because it just took so much. You know, in these like package wars, like it's all about like it's all about first movers and all that. Like, man, simple schema got just blew up, right? And astronomy is like simple schema. It's probably better than simple schema. It has a little bit more. There's like a lot more stuff you could do. Simple schema is very simple and basic, and that's kind of why I like it. But yeah, Astronomy 2.0 came out, and pretty much, let's see, like I was reading what the new stuff. Um, right here. There it is. So pretty much in 2.0, they've added not much actually, but it's not much actually. To be honest, it's just a nice little wrapper around Mongo right now. Um, when I look at these types of things, I always wonder, like, do people need all this functionality? Like, would you see everyone like when you're writing like server code, you want to be as like atomic as possible. You don't want to like fetch from the server, mutate it in place, and then send it back because you that might be inconsistent. You don't want to lose data integrity.
Mm-hmm.
But with the astronomer, you can actually do that. You can actually mutate these your data, and then it has a save method, things like that. And it actually makes more sense for the client because then you can have a little bit more direct relation with the mini Mongo side of things and like a form or an input field.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Personally, we don't use this in our app, and it's because we wanted like just a basic, simple schema approach, and we thought we didn't want any bloat code that we weren't going to use. But that's purely opinion of a team. Like anyone could use any of these little packages. But yeah, I wish I had more to say. I would recommend anyone from checking it out. But really, it's just an ORM, and I think Yagi will kill me for just saying that. But I think it's just an ORM, to be honest.
Yeah. I think the room is here for it to exist for sure.
Yeah.
I certainly, like when I first came to the Meteor community, I felt like there was something missing here and wrote a blog post about like, where's Meteor's ORM? And
Yeah.
kicked off a conversation with a lot of people and got them interested in projects. Like I didn't have the time to get involved with that kind of stuff. And then like Yagi came out of nowhere with this. And I think it's interesting. I was never a huge fan of not so much simple schema, but autoform.
Yeah, autoform sucks.
It
Oops,
felt
sorry.
weird.
Sorry.
The way you tie auto form options into your simple schema just felt wrong. Like I don't really want to put view layer concerns in my schema.
Yeah,
Felt weird.
that's a little too ISO.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Have you ever felt like that you needed this type of software in your apps? Like,
I did early on, right? Like I
yeah.
did miss it from Rails,
But do
but
you need it
then
now? Like, how does your workflow change if we use
so
this ORM?
here's the thing that I'll say, right? I think that Apollo is a project of the future for Meteor, but I almost wonder, where would we be if they would have embraced an ORM and it allowed them to have multiple backend options behind it.
Yeah.
Which they did. They did toy with the idea. They did the Postgres project and that kind of thing, but nothing really came to full fruition as a supported long-term option.
Yeah.
And maybe you look at Active Record and realize that in Rails land like that, you can swap that out from MySQL to a number of different options. And as long as you conform to active relations, then you can use Active Record and kind of back it by a number of different data stores. And maybe we'd be looking at something different. But I also think GraphQL solves interesting problems as well. So it's certainly a different way to approach it.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I guess I'm kind of really biased on GraphQL right now, because looking at GraphQL and having a lot of understanding now, like Yagi is trying to solve the problem of Meteor right now, and he's doing a great job. But I wonder if this will change. I guarantee that people who are using the different data tools, packages like this are going to be hard to maintain. But I think he's just doing astronomy as actually a general project, and he's using it for multiple places, right? I think this is just for Meteor,
right?
So that's good. I mean, that's good. Not much to say. I wish I could say more though.
Well, I think if this conversation came up 2 years ago, I would have been all over this. But I think now, especially in the face of we're not really. I think, I mean, we'll see simple schema maintained, but I mean, didn't Eric come out and say Autoform wasn't going to be maintained anymore? I definitely know
You
one of
look
his
at
libraries.
I mean, the best way to look is commit history and issues,
Yeah,
and yeah, because those really speak more
yeah.
to
I
yeah.
just I think honestly, like Blaze is not gonna be a thing forever, and even with community support, it's not
Yeah,
gonna be where it needs to be. So, I mean, some of this stuff is just not gonna be around. I I'm still really curious to hear, and I wish they would have talked about it in transmission. Like, what's the future for DDP? I'm kind of getting the impression it's gonna be like, whatever the community thinks it should be at this point. Which
I have a different thought about live data and how it's gonna go. I think live data actually will still be an option for Meteor apps, and I think what they're gonna do is actually give it more fine tuning, so people can use live data in outside of Meteor apps.
fine tuning Mongo? What?
No, I mean like our next post is about this exact topic. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Good segue. Good segue.
Okay, let's go into the next topic because this is what I will carry on. You go first.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So, Meteor. Whoo! Finally, with the 1.3 release, added the ability to say disable uplog true for queries on your find calls. Right. So when
Hmm.
you're on the server and you're doing your publications, you can say disable uplog, and it's going to not monitor that through the uplog anymore. So I still think we're not 100% there and everything that we need, but I think Mongo maybe has to change before
Yeah.
the other side of it, right? Because
Hmm.
you still have to process those updates for uplog true queries,
Yeah.
right? And so if you have something that's like pushing a lot of writes into the database, you probably want to move that out to another database, which is the way to handle it. And
Hmm.
then just say disable uplog true
Yeah.
on your query, and you're gonna fall back to a pull-in diff. And it looks like, and so I was actually digging through the commit history, and I think that this was in there, and then got pulled, and then got reworked, and then got added back in, and that's why there wasn't a whole lot about it, maybe
Yeah.
in the initial launch, and now we're hearing about it in 1.3.2.4.
Yeah. What if
But
it? Here's a funny thought.
what?
Have you ever been have you ever been in those situations where like someone who works at a company like writes code for a certain thing, and let's say they leave halfway through, okay, and then the next guy comes in, he tries to understand the code, or girl comes in, tries to understand the code, and they're like, oh, I don't understand any of this, so they pull it out, and then they write it again. But that's not what happened here. I just had a funny
No,
thing.
no, no. This was actually, from the looks of it, this was contributed by Meteor, from what I could tell. So this was actually, some of this was contributed by outside community, which was cool.
Yeah, and he always does a really good job of
Yeah,
like
yeah. But
exploring.
there
Yeah.
was some kind of back end issue with some other packages, and it broke some other packages, so they had to like pull it, re-release, and
Yeah.
then rework it and put it back out. Um, Yeah, and so I think the thing to understand here is, right, like you have two different options, right? You can do the pull and diff, or you can do the oplog. And the pull and diff is you as the server saying, hey, it's been 10 seconds. Let me check again. Is there any new data? And the server, like the Mongo server, will respond and say yes or no, and then you'll fetch that data and return it to the client, right? That's the pull and diff. Whereas with the oplog, the server is just sitting there pretending like it's a piece of the replica set for Mongo, and it's getting data fed to it as it's changing, and so your server is just sitting there watching this big change log rush by it and picking out the pieces of data it cares about, and then updates the client. So the big difference is, you're not. For the most part, if you don't have a lot of writes, you're consuming less CPU. I think the memory is probably not really any different uh, one way or another. But the the biggest thing is like, number one, like, have you ever asked someone like how real time do you need your data to be?
Yeah, and everyone says not that real time.
Right, which is funny, right? Because like we're, for the most part, we have no way to say like we don't care about this data being real time. Like that's still the missing option here, perhaps.
Yeah.
Um, but in my conversations with clients, like they're tolerant to like 30, 60 seconds, something in that range. And so
Yeah.
now you can now tweak that as well. On the pull and diff side, there's some levers you can use to kind of decide when you're going to check for those updates and that kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
Where'd it go? Pull and diff, tuning. Where were they? Oh, TLDR. So now you can set the polling interval and the polling throttle, which I think is also new. There was never a polling throttle before,
Yeah.
which is to say, like, if we've seen an update within the last, I think it's 500 milliseconds by default, then
Yeah.
don't bother to check for one for a little while. So um, that's kind of interesting too. So now we're starting to get to the point where they're tuning the pull and diff,
Yeah.
which is where they could probably do a lot of work as well.
Yeah. I think so. So like the problem with live query, and this is a horror story, is we had this thing called the great, like at work we call this the Great DDP Flood of 2015,
Yep.
and literally it was like we have this notification center, and what it does is it subscribes to user notifications, and pretty much what happens is if you're getting a lot of notifications, you're subscribing a lot. Your subscribers are just going up. Your CPU is going up because a lot of people this is actually a really high throughput subscription, so the server has to manage the op log for thousands of people that are trying to and every page we had a bug where you're resubscribing every page, so it's just like the biggest flood of DDP messages, like super, just like our CPU was just high. I think like it almost crashed one of our containers, but anyway, it's because if you don't manage live query, like people say they don't want reactivity. Well, if you don't want reactivity, then you have to manage that, because if you don't control reactivity, you will screw yourself over, like really bad. Your users will hate you. It'll take a long time to load pages. Also, if you're using Iron Router, oh, good luck. Good luck even rendering and having fun rendering pages. Like the DDP flood is real, and you should be aware of that.
Yes, absolutely. I actually think it's more than that, right? Like I've had instances where I've had to parse out like over 1,000 records to get aggregate data on the page, and it turned out like that was actually really bad. I think it was 7,000 records. And so what happened is we were getting reports because it was a phone app, right?
Yeah.
Cordova, and it would just like the page wouldn't load. And so I was trying to figure out why, and I ended up using the simulator and attaching the console to it. And what I ended up seeing is the WebSocket would crash. When you push too much data through it, it would crash on the browser. And this was across Firefox, Chrome, and Safari that I saw this happen. I actually think it's a problem in WebSocket itself, where it could only handle a couple megs of data, and then it toppled over. And then what Meteor does is it thinks, oh, well, we got a fresh WebSocket, let's go get data. And so like that was the flood that we got on the server, right? Is because it would load that page, and then it would look like it's loading, it would say it's loading, and then it would crash, and then it would load again. And then, like,
if you look at your frames, you're creating new sockets, and you'll see a whole list of them, and none of them, and they're all, and actually only the first socket got the initial payload. All these other sockets are ping ponging. So they're not even doing anything for you, right?
Right.
They're trying to.
No, they weren't. So what I saw is like each new one that would be created would try to go fetch the data until it crashed again.
Oh, okay.
The ping pong would stop, right? Because that was a dead web socket at that point. But you're still like, you're essentially like distributed denial of service attack on your own server, because a couple clients would just be hammering the database at that point.
Yeah, and honestly, like for me, and this is my recommendation for people, use disable oplog true. That should be your default setting, like for until you really need. Like I would start with disable oplog and enable it when you need it. That's how I would approach it, because it's really hard to pick and choose once you've enabled everything. It's hard to pick and choose what dependencies you have with real time data, And like,
I mean, so the thing I would say there is like that's a significant CPU difference. Like with Crater, I've seen like, at 20 users, we were starting to spike out the CPU, 20, 30 users, and we're able to handle like 200 per server where before we're even getting close to spiking the CPU. But again, most of that's going to depend on like what your write pattern looks like and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, if you have a write-intensive app, Meteor, it's a little painful to scale it in terms
totally,
of application
totally.
code. But
Yeah.
there's a UI library that could help you like manage all this complexity. Just kidding. I'm trying to segue. I'm not good at them, man. I'm not as good as Ben. Ben's so much better at the segues. But oh no, do you want to segue?
Well, so when you have a lot of data, like how do you control that for the client? I don't know.
Oh, okay. There's a segue.
Yeah.
The next and last article. I'm new, guys. It's all good. I'll get a hang of all this stuff. I also been very controversial today because I'm going to say some stuff about this next article too. So this next article is called "A Bridge Between Redux and Meteor" by
Mm.
Gabriel Poca. I hope I said that right. And he pretty much explains how application state today, or before Redux, and that's what we're talking about, Redux, it was done through collections, sessions, and reactive vars. And I've blogged about this before, and those are like the state management tools for the client, like session
Mm.
variables, which we know are evil, and if you use them, you should feel ashamed of yourself. Collections are always, I think, the most powerful. Reactive dictionaries are very powerful, and reactive vars. All these guys wrap the tracker library, the Meteor tracker library, to give you a little reactive, tracker bound variables
Mm.
or processes like mini Mongo or collections. Now, the problem with this and the problem with tracker is how it invalidates itself, right? Any dependency chain in a tracker function will rerun the whole function. So once again, with this live query stuff, if you don't manage your tracker computations, you will screw yourself over again. If you let's say you could technically get yourself an infinite loop if you update something in the
Yeah.
same function that you're reading it, and you get overflow. Like these things can happen, right?
They
So,
can. They can.
so if you're not careful,
Yeah.
but and so converse to say in his thing, he's saying that Redux is actually a very predictable way of managing all this state, and because it comes with a bunch of tooling, you actually can feel more comfortable managing your state in the client. And he actually, what he does different than what I would do is he actually still uses not mini Mongo, but Mongo um, publications and subscriptions, and he actually auto runs cursors. And when they change, he'll go dispatch some Redux action to the store. So this is interesting. There's a guy named Lucy who's in the Meteor community Slack or Space Dojo Slack channel, and his implementation was to go into DDP itself, and when DDP was pushing down objects from the server, it was going to actually put them in a Redux store for you. Much
Mm.
much like Apollo, and what we do at Apollo when we take GraphQL data and put it into a Redux store for you. He had that implementation. The
Yeah.
problem with that implementation is no one really felt comfortable someone putting some stuff into DDP. Like no one felt comfortable with that, which I think that's why I didn't get a little bit bigger. You also, Lucy, you probably should keep working on that, bro, because you kind of dropped off, calling you out. But if he kept working on that, that could have been a de facto solution for people trying to use Meteor data directly. What Gabriel is suggesting is actually just using Tracker in Tracker and publications to auto run them and just essentially connect like subscription data into your component, and that's cool. And I recommend anyone to try it. It's really elegant the way he did it. Now, what I disagree with is I don't like that you're using Meteor data and its Meteor data tools and kind of like using Tracker not a way it's supposed to be used kind of deal, right? Like if I'm going to do pub sub, I automatically am going to get a mini Mongo collection. I essentially am duplicating my data now. If I'm using mini Mongo for, let's say I do a messages.find, I have that data and I'm subscribed to it already in a mini Mongo collection. There is no point to then put it in also in the store. And that's where I kind of struggle with these patterns because there's no one is disabling mini Mongo here. They're just adding the store. You're adding another piece to your app, which I don't see as valuable. You're duplicating it. Now, to say this again, if you use methods, you're not actually using mini Mongo. You're returning some response. What you can do is you can dump that into a Redux store, and it's going to be reactive in the sense of it's reactive. It is like a mini Mongo cache as well. And I think if you're using Redux and Meteor, you should be using Meteor methods to fetch data until Apollo comes and works for you, because then that integration is super clean. You could do the Lucy way of using DDP directly, which I think is the cleanest way if you're going to do it. But there's no point in duplicating data on the client. Like, I mean, it's free, I guess. You can do it if you want.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I would agree with you. Like hearing the comparison, right? So here's the thing: I haven't used Redux yet, and I'm like, I get the advantages of it, and I haven't fully bought into it because you're right, like there's no great integration point between a Meteor backend and a Redux front end. There's different ideas you could try.
Exactly.
No one's really figured it out, and maybe Lucy's way would be good. Maybe GraphQL is the answer, and you move to Apollo. But again, that's going to be a while, right?
That's going to be a while, yeah.
So, for me, like what I've done so far with React is just kind of what you were talking about, the different tracker kind of component configurations that are available out there. I think they're interesting, right? You build a container that's going to fetch your data for you, and then it passes it down the React tree as props to the different components that you're putting on the page and building. And I'm a fan, I think, still of Tracker React. Like I was confronted with figuring something out because the client was on a get Meteor data mix-in still.
Yeah.
Terrible.
That's
and like looking at it, it encourages bad patterns. Like I have the benefit of hindsight and seeing what good patterns look like from people that came before me, and like the way this app was built was actually really bad. But I think Tracker React gets you as close as you can to being able to not tie all of it up into one method, which I think is what Meteor, if you look at the guide, is still encouraging, right? They've got their container version, which is similar to Tracker React, and you're kind of dumping it all into one area. And then, if anything changes in there, like you're talking about, you got to rerun that entire function again, which is not really what you want. Feels like you're kind of not using React to its full potential. And so I think like Tracker Component and Tracker React both allow you to kind of get that slightly more granular layer. And those are the two that are interesting to me, and therefore like I'm using PubSub to get my server-side data in, and then using one of those like Tracker React or something to kind of handle updating when that data shows up. And then also I'm able to use reactive vars to do the kind of the client side
and
stuff.
that is a probably a recommended approach for people who are building for live query systems. For example, WorkPop, we started moving away from PubSub because we have new data needs. They're not always going to be in Mongo. So we have data in some microservices. So why, we also, from the UI standpoint, we do not want to deal with unexpected re-renders that we would still see using Tracker, not Tracker React, but the React Meteor data thing. And at that point, what we did is we thought about the problem. We thought about, what do we need to do in our workflow for our users to refresh data or mutate data? Like, what do we really need to do? And what we thought was, Well, essentially, we just need to get some data on the first load, and there are certain actions on the page that probably want to refresh. And once we define, like, okay, what actions cause refreshes, we only found out there was only like two things on the page that would cause a refresh, right?
Mm.
And so then now we like isolated the problem. So if we ever run into the situations where users do these two actions, then we refresh the data, but then it's like a static site again. Like, we don't care. You just chill on the page. You have the data you want. There's no live query. We don't really need you to update stuff. And this is actually called the client request. It's like a client request pattern. And that's what Apollo is actually built like. Today, if you do mutations, the data that you're mapped to your component as a refetch property. And so you can do some mutation, and in the callback, you can say refetch. And right now, it's not as magical as Tracker, but it's predictable. And I think I would always emphasize predictability over reactivity, right? Because you can always fake reactivity. You can always like fake it. And
That's true. That's true.
As a programmer, we're magicians. Just make a freaking illusion, and it'll still be as if you were using live query. No one's going to know, right?
Right.
So that's the kind of approach that we've done. And now that we see Apollo that is pretty much adopting that approach, but with GraphQL, and we're doing the same approach essentially with the Meteor method and DDP, like it makes more sense to do Apollo, right? Because there's more options there. So sorry for the ramble, but Gabriel had a great article. I just wanted to give my little point on pretty much the data needs there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's great. Like, there's a number of people that have heard about Redux, maybe don't even know what it is, and they're not sure, like, you're looking around and trying to decide how you're going to do it,
Yeah.
And everybody has a slightly different idea at this point because there's no great one integration point from Meteor itself, MDG, I guess.
Yeah.
And, you're absolutely right, like, to the point of... that problem I was talking about before where the WebSocket was crashing.
Yeah.
It turned out like the client didn't even care. We asked the client, like, would seeing updated data every 3 minutes be okay? And so we moved from having thousands of aggregated records on the client to running an ag query every 3 minutes on the server and dumping it into a collection.
Yeah.
And we pulled from that collection. The client's like, yeah, sure, let's do 5, and I'm like, woohoo, it's even better for performance. So I would definitely agree. Like, it's always easy to go back later and fake out some of that data.
That's why I'm saying, like, disable oplog first and figure out when you need it. Mm-hmm. Figure out your reactive, because like reactive is not necessarily real time. So that's, people should understand the difference. Like, reactive means that you're writing code in like declaratively, so things update like Excel. Real time means literally real time, like data is updating over the wire instantly. So you should define what your real time needs are, define what your reactive needs are. And if you don't need real time, then don't even think about it.
I almost feel like this problem would be solved if we had a way to authenticate with DDP across microservices, and maybe that's the missing piece, right? Because if you have something that is write intensive, you can move that off to its own microservice.
That's true.
Sounds great. But there's no way for you to say, like, oh, hey, but I am a user over here on this microservice. Mm-hmm. We're lacking.
That's lacking right now. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
You need something like the JSON web tokens or something.
Right? JOTs.
Like Passport.
Yes. If anybody's looking for a good, like, middle tier auth service that's like not Meteor, you can use this microservice called Authentic, and Authentic is just what I said. It uses JSON web tokens, and it'll allow you to build like an actual authentication service that probably can plug into Meteor. I haven't done it yet, but you could. And you can replace Meteor accounts.
I'd almost be much more of a fan of seeing someone like get Passport integration going with like Meteor accounts or something and using JSON web tokens. That would be super interesting. And
totally.
That's one thing I did ask Sashko is like, looking at how everything's working right now with Apollo, like, could we do it with Passport? And they're like, yeah, we actually already did. We just need to get the examples up in the docs. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like that's that's a well-supported project with lots of authentication options. And
Yeah, totally. Like, I honestly think like I would see the Meteor community is going to become more microservice crazy
mhm.
because the opportunity is there and the ability to do so is there. And you're going to see things like accounts break out into microservices, and you could probably expect some tutorials and little helper packages bootstrapping that for you because what's every app need? Authentication, right?
Yeah,
And I don't
yeah,
think
and
like the resume ID, the resume token stuff, like that's cool, but I think you got to go with the industry, which they're
mhm.
moving towards these web tokens. So
Yeah, JWT. Totally agree. And that's the pain point. Like I don't want to deal with that again. And I've liked not dealing with it a whole lot since I moved from Rails to
mhm.
Meteor. The account system is just there. And whenever they make an update to it, they care about my developer experience and try to
Yeah.
make it backwards compatible as much as they can. And like that wasn't there in the Rails community. It was like, oh, use RESTful auth. Oh no, today we're using like this other standard that
hmm
gosh, I don't even remember the name of it now. Jose Valim, the guy that created Elixir, created a popular option back in the day. And then, after I left, like they had 10 different other ones that popped up, and I don't know, flavor of the week. Rails fatigue. It's real.
Rails fatigue. Yeah,
Totally.
that was good. That was a good topic.
Yeah, definitely. And we got to interlace a lot of Apollo talk as well. So that was
Yeah, I think you guys will expect more Apollo stuff.
definitely,
So
definitely. All
cool.
right, Abby. Well, thank you for this inaugural episode, number 101.
Thanks. Sorry for being so controversial today.
Not at all. I embrace controversy.
Oh, nice. Well, good. And all the authors, like, if I was controversial, like, it's not against your work or anything. It's
Yeah, no, I
purely.
think it's, we
I don't
encourage
want people to
everyone to
get the
write.
wrong idea, but
Yeah.
I appreciate all the work that you guys have done for the community with your contributions. But I do have my own opinions.
Well, I'll say it a different way. Like, we're never going to know what's right unless we figure out all the things that are wrong first.
Yes, definitely.
And that's not to say some of these things, like someone else may come along and read it and be like, well, there's a slight tweak here. And, this
Yeah,
is a great
totally.
idea. And I don't know. Could be interesting. And that's not to say Abby's right either, totally. So
Yeah, yeah. I'm just saying, I could be
me, on the
wrong.
other hand,
Oh, yeah, Josh is always right. So,
no, definitely not. As always, big thanks to Modulus and DigitalOcean for sponsoring the show. If you're interested in hosting services, definitely check those guys out, modulus.io and digitalocean.com. And Patreon, patreon.com/Meteor Club if you want to get into the Slack room. I think we're hitting Slack fatigue maybe. We're getting to that point. Things are slowing down on the signups. So I'm gonna try to think of some new rewards and exciting things that can come out of this show and other shows. So
yeah, being in the Slack chat is actually pretty valuable. You get to talk to a lot of media developers, people who are actually making applications and stuff. So, and everyone's like really willing to help you. I'm there.
absolutely,
If you care what I say, I can talk to you there too. So,
totally,
uh,
totally.
so join, dudes and
Yeah.
girls. We need more girls too. So,
Yes, definitely. Yeah, which I'm gonna be putting up a Crater code of conduct soon too. That'll be interesting.
yeah, it's about that time.
And it'll apply to the Space Dojo Slack room as well.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna get kicked out.
Probably.
Oh man. Oh well.
All right, guys. As
All right.
always, tune in next week, and we will be talking more JavaScript news.
See ya.
This video has been a Space Dojo production. You can click the Learn More button to find out more about us at spacedojo.com. Or you can click the subscribe button to get notified about new videos we put out each week. Thanks for watching.